Hey everyone, this is Kathy from K-Dale Handmade. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today we are going to be sewing up the August back to school themed Marathon Sewciety sew along. So we have lots of sewers who are joining us today in our back to school themed makes. So each maker today will be making different items that they feel are great for back to school. So today I have two items that I'm going to be making that I feel are my essential back to school items. So the first item is the Call It What You Want pouch. This is a free pattern video tutorial on my YouTube channel. Just search for Call It What You Want pouch. And I've added a clasp here on the side so that you can hook it to a backpack, which I think is great because backpacks seem to get really packed, really stuffed, and there's no room like for a pencil case. So having this clasp on the outside, you can just hook it to your outside of your backpack and you're ready to go. So here I'm using, again, on this one I have vinyl top and bottom, the Queen of Hearts, and then I even have a little, if I can get it here, a little heart-shaped zipper pull. All right, and then the inside is just simple, plain, just a pouch. Here is a pen for size reference so you can see how it measures up. And I find this is great for a lot of things. That's why I called it the Call It What You Want pouch, because you can put pens, pencils in here. I use one for crochet hooks. You can put makeup, toiletries, little toys and trinkets, really whatever you want. So this is the Call It What You Want pouch. That is the first item we're going to be making up today. The second item is one of my all-time favorites. As you know, if you've been around my channel or in my Facebook group, one of my mottos is that life is too short for boring notebooks. And I am an office supply nerd, so having really fun, cool notebooks is like right up my alley. Okay, so we are making this. This is the raw edge version of the Jot It Down. There are some changes to the original pattern that I will talk about in the video, including this spine accent, a little pen loop. I also edge painted in lime. And so together, these are my two favorite must-have items for back to school. Okay, just a few more housekeeping items before we get started. Don't forget to like, subscribe to my channel, and hit that little bell so you get notified every time there's a new video posted. All right, guys, now that we have all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with our sew along. All right, let's go ahead and start with the Call It What You Want pouch. Now this version that I'm doing here is a little bit different from the free version that is listed on my YouTube. There's a video for it. It's the Call It What You Want pouch. Since this one is different, I'm going to go over and show you everything that I did differently to make this version. So you will have, here, let's just start with, I'm doing the base, the bottom section that's going to be coming up to the side, and that one measures, let's see, 11 1/4 by 6. So that will be the base. And then I'm going to have, I just decided to add accents, so it'll be like this and like this. Since it is directional, I will be, making them that way so they're the right side up when I finish it and turn it through. All right, so these top accent pieces are 3 inches by 11 1/4 inches. So you have got your base, you've got your 2 top accent pieces. You will have your 1 11 1/4 inch zipper, a zipper pull, and since I'm doing Alice and I have a pink heart here for the zipper pull, I also have a lobster clasp that will go on one of the ends. That is optional. You don't have to add that, but I like that because then it makes it real easy to clip on to your backpack. And then I'm using a piece of vinyl here. These are going to be the end tabs for the pouch. I am using a piece of vinyl. You could also use a strip of webbing. I'm like, what am I trying to say? A strip of webbing. So this is actually 2 inches long, or 2 inches wide by 6 inches long, because I'm going to be making 1 inch tabs for this and cutting it in half. So if you're using strap webbing, you will just use 1 inch strap webbing at 3 inches long. And that's it for this pouch. Oh, and then you will, of course, need your piece of lining. And this one is 11 1/4 inches long, or yeah, long, wide, I should say, and 10 1/4 inch long. All right, so let's go ahead and get started first with our tabs. So what I've done on the back side is I have already drawn a line. It might be hard to see because it's kind of faint, but I drew a line down the middle, and then I attached some double-sided tape, and I'm just going to fold the tab in here to the center. And then the same on the other side. Now optionally, if you're using a more thin type of vinyl, or you just wanted to give it a little extra strength, you could add a strip of either stabilizer, you could use grosgrain ribbon, something like that on the inside before you fold these sides into the middle. Just lay that down on the inside, and that's going to give your strap a little extra strength. Okay, so once that is done, what we're going to do is top stitch down each long side. I'm going to set this to the side just for a minute because I'm going to take all of this to the machine at the same time. So setting the zipper and the hardware to the side, we're going to take our base, and because we want to make sure that this is right side up, we're just going to flip it over. So make sure your fabric is going the correct direction. We're going to flip it over so that it is right sides together, and we're going to clip along this straight edge. And we're going to do the same thing to the other side, flipping it over, clipping along this straight edge. Okay, and then we're going to take this to the machine and sew down these two long sides. We're going to sew these at 3/8 of an inch. So sew right along 3/8 of an inch, and again we're sewing at 1/8 of an inch from each side of this strap. Okay, once you get that sewn, this is what your strap is going to look like. We are going to now just cut this right in half, and I'm just going to use my rotary cutter since I know it is 6 inches long and I want it to be 3 inches. I'm just going to cut it, and I've got the two tabs. Now we can take our optional lobster clasp and just slide it over, slide the tab through the lobster clasp, and just go ahead and clip it right on the end just to hold it in place. And this other one as well, you can fold it in half and just add a clip there. So we have our strap tabs prepared for when we need them in just a second. Okay, now moving back to our main panel, this is how it looks. What I'm going to suggest is on the back side, you're going to butterfly these seams open, and then you're going to flip it over and top stitch down each side of that seam. So we're going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch, and I think I'm going to add some double-sided tape to this. For me, as you all know, I love double-sided tape, and it's just going to make it a whole lot easier. And I have to laugh because this darker pink vinyl that I'm using here is the Luxe vinyl from Mormino, and so it has sort of a suede backing to it, and it does not slide very well. It doesn't slide very well. So when I'm trying to slide it, like, you know, like my whole thing, everything moves because it just wants to stick right to this table. So it's just funny. Not that it matters one way or the other, it's just funny to me. All right, so removing that paper backing, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to push this open. Now you could also use fabric glue for this part. You could use nothing. You could just, you know, use your fingers as you sew to make sure the seam is nice and open and flat. But that is what we want to do with the seam. And then turning it over, we're going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch down each side of the seam. We're going to do the same thing for this side as well. All right, here is how that looks once you get it done. Top stitched down both of those side seams. So here is it. I would suggest if you wanted to add a label a logo label, I would add it here, and I typically add it about 1 inch down. So it would be right in this area right here, centered about 1 inch down. And I do that because you got to remember the top part of our bag is going to be folded over, so you don't want to have it too close to the top, or your logo is going to be on that fold right there at the side. So I am not adding a label at this time, so I don't have to worry about that. All right, next thing we need to do is we need to grab our zipper and go ahead and just separate the zipper tape. So we have 2 halves, and again, I'm going to use some double-sided tape. Just going to add it right here along this straight edge. And then same on the other side. Okay, and then removing the paper backing, we're going to take one of our pieces of zipper. We're going to flip it over so it is teeth side down, and with the fabric side up at the top, we are going to line it up here with the top edge of this panel. So I'm just pressing that in place. The double-sided tape should hold it just enough. My zipper is a little bit longer, and that is fine. I will just trim it all at the end. Same thing with this side, flipping that zipper over, and then we're just going to line it up with the top edge there, clipping that in place, or not clipping it in place, well, clipping it in place if you're using clips. If you're using double-sided tape, just go ahead and press that in place. All right, so now what we need to do is just verify that our lining is the same size as our exterior. And mine is a little bit shorter, and that is okay because that will help to ensure that I don't have a baggy lining on the inside. So I am good with where this is at right here. If it was a little bit wider or longer, you could just trim it up. And again, that has to do with your seams, you know, how you sewed this here. If you sewed it a little bit more or less than 3/8 of an inch, that's why you might have that bit of a difference there. Okay, so we're going to leave this panel right side up. We're going to take our lining panel, flip it over. This is, I'm using ripstop nylon here, so the right side of the ripstop nylon is the one that's a little bit shinier. So I'm just going to flip that down. I'm going to line up the top edge, and so I'm centering it left to right and lining it up here at this top edge, clipping it all the way across. Actually, I think I need to adjust it a little bit more this way. All right, there we go. Okay, and then same thing for the other side. We're going to clip that in place all the way across. All right, and then once you have that clipped in place, we are going to sew down each side at 1/4 of an inch. Okay, once you get that sewn down each side, we are now going to take the whole thing and turn it through. All right, and then pulling out those seams, and I just like to add some clips along the sides just to help hold it in place. You don't have to do this, this is optional, but as I'm pulling these side seams out, I like doing that because it helps everything to kind of stay where it's supposed to. Okay, now I'm just going to pull that zipper out and kind of press the seam to help hold this side in place now. And then flipping it over, that's what it's looking like there. So now we have our panel this way. We're going to take it to the machine and top stitch down each side of the zipper. So right along this edge here at 1/8 of an inch. All right, so here's what we have. Since I was already at the machine, I went ahead and just base stitched down the side seams as well, just to help hold it in place. Now what we need to do is we need to attach the zipper pull. So grabbing your tube, you want to have it inside out like this. We're going to attach our zipper pull to one end. We're going to slide it on. And grabbing it, we're going to pull it all the way through and pull it off again. That's because we want this zipper to be completely closed on both sides. That's going to make our later steps a whole lot easier and make sure that our zipper stays even and together. All right, once you do that, you're going to separate the one end again just a little bit. Slide that zipper pull back on. If I can get my little strings out of the way. And then just kind of slide it into the middle like that so it's out of the way. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to mark the bottom centers. So just folding this in half, you want to kind of have the zipper teeth right at the end there. Match up your seams on the inside. You can match up your side seams as well. That's another easy spot to make sure that it's together. Okay, then once you have it here at the corner, we're going to just make a tiny little snip. You can also use a mark with a pen if you wanted to use that instead to make your mark. You could just do a little pen mark there. I'm just making a tiny snip, small enough that it will be in the seam allowance and you're not going to see it, but it'll help me to line everything up. Okay, so having it nice and flat, now what we need to do is grab our two D-rings here. So now looking at your zipper pull, the flat end here is the closed end. So that is the end where we just need the plain tab. So grabbing your tab, we're going to line it up with the center of the zipper. And you can have it overhang the side of the tab by about, I usually do somewhere between 1/4 of an inch and 3/8 of an inch. That's just how I line mine up. And then bringing that center mark up, again, matching up where the zipper is, the center mark there with where your zipper teeth are. And then we're going to clip it in place again, just like that. And then on the other side, which has your lobster clasp, and again, you want it towards the open side because if you're going to hook it onto a bag, you want to make sure that this is at the top of the little pouch. All right, so again, with that being centered, we're going to drop it in so that hardware and everything is inside of the pouch, centering it first over the zipper. You want to try and get this right as centered as possible, and then bringing that other side up, matching up that little center mark that you made and clipping that in place there. Okay, so once we get that done there, we're just going to stitch straight across, maybe do a couple back stitches here just to connect these D-ring tabs in place, and then we're going to come back here, cut out the corners and finish it up. All right, now that that is stitched down here right at the zipper, what we need to do is mark our boxed corners. So we're going to come in from the short side, 1 1/4 inch, and then we're going to come up from the side at 1 inch. So we're making 1 inch box corners, but since we are doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance, we need to account for that 1/4 inch here on the side that's going to be hidden in the seam allowance. So that's why we're coming in 1 1/4 inches from the side and 1 inch up from the long side. So we're going to go ahead and mark that on all of the corners. Okay, once I get that marked, I will add a couple clips here along the long side, and that is just so it helps to hold, again, it helps to hold everything in place. but also it helps it to prevent from rolling and sliding around on me when I'm trying to cut these corners out. All right, so once you have those cut or clipped in place, we can come in here with our scissors and cut these corners. We're just going to cut these little tabs away from each corner, and I recommend going nice and slow as you come into those corners, because sometimes they can get it can get a little tight in the corner, and you don't want to accidentally cut too far, and then you have a big cut in your corner. So just go slow as you're coming up to where that corner tab is, that corner mark. All right, there you go. So now that corners are cut out, now what we need to do is go back, and at 1/4 of an inch, we're going to sew all the way along this long edge right here. All right, once that is stitched all the way down the side, now what we need to do is just trim up those side seams. Okay, we can take these side tabs off, these side clips. All right, so now what we need to do is, I forgot to mention, but we are going to need some bindings for the side. You can use fabric for this. You could use the same lining material that you have and fold it over that. That would make it hidden and no one would see that. I am using strips here of waterproof canvas binding. So this is from Wonderground Fabrics, and this color is called, where is it? It's 5 Fuchsia. My finger was right over it. 5 yards of binding. This is what it comes in, and this is the fuchsia that I'm using. So all I've got to do is just fold this in half right over that edge. Let's see here. I just want to make sure it's covering that seam, that stitch line. We're going to clip it in place across that side. Same over here on this side. We're going to clip it in place over that edge, and then we're going to sew down right along this edge again, sewing this little tab onto the edge, and that's going to cover up and give us a nice neat seam on the inside. All right, once you get that sewn down, we can go ahead and just trim off any part that's overhanging here from the side. We'll do that to both sides here. All right, and now we are ready to box the corners. So I'm just going to open the zipper up a little bit so I can get in there a little bit easier. And because we measured that at 1/4 inch in, it should be nice, and your seams should match up right there in the center. So I'm just going to push this seam down, and I'm going to use a stronger clip here to clip that in place. So that's what that looks like. Same on this side. Opening that up, matching that center seam, and it should square out pretty nicely. So again, I'm going to use these stronger clips for these side seams. It's a small area, and I just want to make sure it holds it really well. All right, if you want to add some extra clips for when you get to the sewing machine and you're ready to sew it down, you can use these clips on the side here, and again, that will help to hold it in place. All right, and same on this side, you're going to fold that seam towards the bottom of the bag. All right, once you get all those side seams clipped, we're going to take it over to the sewing machine, and we are going to sew down each side. So just go ahead and stitch down at 1/4 inch on all 4 sides. All right, once the side seams are sewn, again, we are just going to come in and trim it so that it's even along each side seam. I'm trimming maybe only like just a little bit, an 1/8 to 1/16 inch off of each side, just trimming it nice and flat. Okay, and then once we get that, again, we need to attach the strips of binding. So we're just going to, like we did on the other one, we're just going to fold it right over. And I'm not worried on this one that there is a, quote, raw edge, because that's going to be pushed inside of the bag and inside of this little pouch, and it's going to be tucked away in the corners, and you're not going to see it. If you are worried about it, or if you're using a different type of material, what you can do is first fold under this edge and then fold it over. So you could cut it a little bit longer and fold it over like this so that you do not have a raw edge right there. This is waterproof canvas and it doesn't really fray, so I'm not too worried. All right, so just covering up all those side seams. All right, so once those are all clipped in place, we're just like we did on these little end pieces here. Now we need to do the same to all 4 sides. So we're going to sew down at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way down each side. Okay, once all 4 sides are sewn on, we are now going to come in and at an angle, we're going to trim. So instead of straight across like we did on the other side, we're trimming this at an angle, just keeping right in line with this angle right here. We're going to do that on all 4 pieces. All right, once we get that done, let's go ahead and turn it through. All right, and there is our adorable little pouch. You can shape it out, get those corners nice and flat. Again, of course, you could always shape it. You could add some stabilizer on the inside there to help it have a nice shape as well. But there is the pouch, super cute. So we've got the tab here, and then we've got the clasp here. You can hook it onto your backpack or tote bag or whatever you have. And then on the inside, you've got a good amount of space to put your pens and pencils and whatever else. And then the tab on this side helps you to close it, and everything stays nice and secure. All right, my second project that is a must-have for back to school, because as my motto goes, life is too short to have boring notebooks. So we're going to be making the Jot It Down raw edge version. I am going to be adding a couple things from the original, or that is not included in the original pattern, but something that I think will make this really neat. I'm trying to hold this down because my vinyl wants to curl, but you will need 1 piece for your main outer of vinyl. I'm using a piece of 2.5 inches long. I think this is 1¾ inch wide fold over elastic. That's going to be for a little pen loop. You will have your backing piece. I'm going to be adding this as an accent to the front so that it ties in nicely with the little pouch that we made. And then you have your 2 inside pocket pieces that the notebook will slide into. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to do, I guess actually the first thing I will say, is I've added Decoville Heavy to this. I've cut it down about 1/2 inch all the way around, and there is probably about 1 inch, almost 1 inch gap between. You just want it so that it will fold nicely, and you won't have that thick, stiff binding right there in that seam. Okay, So what we want to do is fold it in half, and I'm going to mark the center with a tiny little notch, and same thing on the bottom. I'm going to mark the center with a tiny notch. And then on my accent piece, I'm going to do the same. And this is so I know where to match it up on the exterior so that it is nice and centered on the finished notebook cover. All right, and for reference, this piece that I'm using here is 6 inches wide, and whatever the height is that's provided in the pattern. So if you don't have the pattern, I will link to that in the video description so that you have all this information. All right, now what I'm going to do is add some double-sided tape down the center. I just want it to hold really well before I get it over to the machine. I don't want it to shift at all. So I'm going to take the paper backing off of the center pieces first. I'm going to leave it on the sides here. And then matching up the top notches. I'm going to add a couple clips here across the center on the top. And then kind of pushing it down nice and flat, and hopefully, and it does, the center notches on the bottom also match up. Okay, so pushing that down nice and flat, and because like I said, my vinyl wants to curl, because I've had it for a while, and it's been in a little tube shape, in a little roll, so I'm just pressing it out like this, and then same on this side. I'm going to press this one out as well, and adding a couple more clips along the top and the bottom to help hold everything in place. All right, once we get that all in place, we're going to grab our little piece of fold over elastic, and I'm going to add it to the right side, and I'm just going to pull this up just a little bit here so that I can slide that in. And you want it to overhang by about, what is that, it's about 1/2 inch. So you just want it out enough so that you're able to slide a pen or pencil or something into this elastic. So about 1/2 inch, no more than that because it'll be too long. Actually, I think I'm going to bring it in a little bit more. I don't want it to be too loose. There we go. I think that's a little better. Yeah, that's about 3/8 inch. So about 3/8 inch sticking out, and then just for reference, I'm just going to hold this. You can see it. You can easily then slide your pen in and it'll hold it nice and securely. Okay, so once we have that in place, now we're going to stitch down each long side at 1/8 inch from the edge. All right, so there it is, all stitched down. I did add just the width of the ribbon right here. I added a 2nd row of stitching just to help give that a little strength there, since that's where our pens are going to be going in and out of. So there you go, there's that. Okay, now flipping it over to the inside, we're going to take our center lining piece, and again, we can find the center mark. Center mark, top and bottom. We're going to lay them so that they are wrong sides together. I'm going to add some clips here along the bottom. Make sure I got it all. Yep, I did. And then matching up that center at the top as well. And adding those clips in place. What I love about this pattern is that it is so quick. You can add features to it. The pattern does include options for adding an internal zipper pocket, card slots, You could have just another big slip pocket here on the side if you wanted to. You could also make it super simple, so if you just needed to knock them out super quick, if you were doing this for a show or a con, these would be really easy and great for knocking out really fast. Okay, so now our two side pieces. We're just going to line those up right on top of that. So we're lining it up with the side seams here. And again, something I love, but also kind of like, ugh, about this vinyl is that because of this like suede type backing, it really does stick to itself. So if you're making this, you really don't have to use double-sided tape on this one because it sticks to itself so well. Okay, I'm just gonna add those to help hold this in place. Okay, and then same thing for the other side. Now I will say the thing with doing this in a raw edge version, if you did not like that on the inside, you always could fold that edge over. So I'll show you what I mean in just a second as I get this clipped all the way around. You could fold those inside edges over and then top stitch them. You could also edge paint them. That would be a really nice way to finish off that inside seam as well. Okay, so right here, for instance, if you didn't like this, you could always fold this under by about 1/4 of an inch all the way down and top stitch it. For me, this is going to be hidden inside the notebook. If you're going to have your notebook open and stuff, you're not really going to see that. So I personally don't care. The other thing you want to take notice of is if you do add that there, because it is going to be a raw edge, you will see that little seam right here at the top. Now, if you're edge painting all the way around, it probably won't be that noticeable, but that's just something to keep in mind. All right, so let me just get this clipped in place here. I will say I do like the edge painting option. If you wanted to edge paint this on the inside here, it is a little extra, and of course edge painting takes time because you have to factor in the dry time, but it does give it a nice feature. Okay, so now we're going to flip it back over. We're going to take it to the machine, making sure everything is nice and lined up, and we're going to stitch all the way around the outside edge of this at 1/4 of an inch. Usually we do top stitching at 1/8 of an inch from the edge. This time we're doing 1/4 of an inch from the edge because we are going to trim it at the end to make sure everything is laying nice and straight, so that if we do edge paint it, it'll make it real easy. All right, now that that is stitched all the way around, what we need to do is just trim it up so that it has a nice flush edge. So what I'll do is I'll just take my ruler and I'll line it up 1/8 of an inch away from my stitch line and just trim up that edge. So I'll do that around all 4 corners, all 4 sides. All right, there we go. So now it's all nice and trimmed. And I just like, another reason why I like doing that is because then you don't have to worry about if your stitching wasn't exactly perfect, or if your material shifted just slightly and it wasn't even, maybe one side came out a little bit, you can just trim it up here at the end and no one is ever the wiser. So I really like having that as my final kind of finishing step for this cover. All right. Now flipping it back over to the inside, again, like I said, the pattern comes with a piece here that you can add if you wanted to add card slots. You also could add an optional zipper pocket here on the inside as well. All options that are included in the pattern. All right, so now we're taking our traditional composition notebook, and these notebooks are measured at 9 3/4 inches by 7.5 inches. So if you have that, it'll fit. And really with this pattern, if you have a notebook that is a different size, it's really not hard to make that adjustment. All right, so there it is. There is our notebook cover with our notebook on the inside. And again, if we wanted to slide our little pen or pencil into the holder, we've got that there. And then we have our pencil case, our call it what you want pouch. So call it a pencil case, call it a makeup pouch, call it what you want. All right, so there is the set. Again, this is my favorite go-to must-have for back to school. Again, you can clip this on your backpack, and then you can make this, you could embroider it, you could add decals, you could add patches, whatever you want. You could make them subject specific, or you could just enter or accent with fandom pieces. Really, it's whatever you want to make it. All right, guys, I really do hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. And then thank you again so much for supporting the Marathon Society.